Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for being here with me tonight. This is the live Ask Me Anything session, and I'm thrilled to be here with you and thrilled to be sharing this time with you. I'm trying to get something up on my screen that's not working right, so I'm just trying to go back here. All right. Got to get rid of this. That's what it is. I've got a screen in front of a screen that's not working well. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. We're going to get started officially as soon as some people join in. Right now, nobody joined us yet, so that's okay. But I want to try to post a comment here. Let me just see if I can make that work. There it goes. Yeah. So let me pin that comment at the top of things here. And yeah, there we go. All right. So as people are joining, we'll get started in just a few minutes. But if you're watching this on a replay or you're joining a little late, this is exactly the right place. Tonight is a creator legal AMA, Ask Me Anything. No slides, no canned presentations, just, real questions, real scenarios, and straight answers from me, Gordon Firemark, the entertainment and podcast lawyer. So if you are a YouTuber, a podcast content creator, a podcaster, a coach, digital entrepreneur, yep, this session is designed for you. I want to be here to educate, inform, enlighten, inspire, and help you accomplish the things that you want to accomplish with your creativity. So while we're waiting for folks to come on in and do it, you can drop a note in the chat anytime you like. Answer for me. What kind of content do you create? What's your medium of choice, your platform of choice, your genre of choice? Is it a podcast? Is it video? Do you write? Mixed media, film, television, music? I'd love to know. Anything else? Love to know. I'm looking at the chat to see if anybody's saying anything here, and doesn't look like that's happening just yet. Oh, my pinned thing didn't work the way I wanted it to. But that's all right. That's all right. Anyway, let me start with something important. Creators almost never get into legal trouble just because they're reckless or arrogant about things. No. They get into trouble because things are working. The momentum is building. The audience starts growing. And that's when the money starts flowing, right? And when money starts flowing, what is it they say? Money is the root of all evil. Someone offers a deal, a collaborator comes on board, and suddenly the legal questions that you meant to deal with later become sort of urgent. Without structure, growing without structure is how creators get burned. For those who haven't met me, my name is Gordon Firemark. In the podcasting circles, they call me the podcast lawyer. And I have spent more than 3 decades working with creators, media companies, filmmakers, television creators, digital entrepreneurs, podcasters, YouTubers, helping them to protect what they're building and avoid the kinds of mistakes that I all too often I see them making. So something's going on my screen, so bear with me while I fix this. And they make these mistakes over and over and over again. And it's so avoidable. It really is. So these are the kinds of mistakes that derail momentum. I've been working with these folks all these years. I've been practicing law and in entertainment law since 1992. And in that time, I've seen a lot. And the way I like to think about the work that I do and the kinds of work that we're doing is simple. I help creators protect what they're building, understand how it works, and when they're ready, I help them scale it into a real media business. Now, if you've ever thought, well, I should probably ask a lawyer about this, but I don't even know really what I don't know. I don't know what to ask, or I'm afraid that the answer will be complicated or expensive. That's not just you. You're not behind. That's normal. It's absolutely normal. The fact is, most creators didn't go to law school. They didn't study this stuff. They may not have even studied business, you know. Most creators don't lack ambition or know-how or intelligence or willingness. What they lack is the roadmap. So I'll be sharing a little more about that as we talk a little later on into this conversation tonight. But a quick word first about how this session is supposed to work. And if you're just tuning in, drop a note in the chat. Let me know who you are and what you do, why you're here, that kind of thing. And this is supposed to be an educational discussion. So I'm not your lawyer. Just because I am a lawyer doesn't mean I'm your lawyer. This is not individualized legal advice unless you have hired me officially as your lawyer. Excuse me. We're not going to be reviewing any contracts live. We're not going to be looking at legal documents. Please don't name names or share private information in the chat. There's no confidentiality on YouTube Live or Facebook Live or LinkedIn Live or whatever, Twitch Live, right? No confidentiality. But if you have questions, that's what I'm here for. So ask your questions in the chat in general terms, and I'll try to give you principles. I'll look out for red flags. I'll give you some clear next steps that you can actually use and take to get things going. Another quick question while people are joining in. What's the one thing that's been nagging at you lately? Contracts, copyright questions, brand names, AI, big thing in the community these days, AI. I'm actually preparing a talk for the Podfest Expo in January. I think I'm delivering my talk on the 16th of January, maybe the 17th. We're going to be talking about AI, and we're going to talk about using AI in creating your content, in creating podcasts or YouTube or influencer content. And the upside is that it's a fantastic tool, but there's a number of legal pitfalls for the unwary. We don't want to fall into those pitfalls. So maybe it's just I don't know what I don't know. Maybe you frame things in just sort of broad context, and I can help you identify some of the touch points that you want to think about. So if you're in here and you're watching us right now, I'd love to hear from you. It looks like we've got about 5 people watching. So drop a note in the chat. Let me know. What are you all about? What do you do? What's your thing? Love to hear from you on that. And, just so you know, you can drop your questions in the chat as we go. I'll try to get to them all, whatever it might be. And stay connected. I've got some upcoming events coming up. You can, first of all, join my mailing list. I do a weekly newsletter, comes out on Fridays. So tomorrow, if you join tonight, you can go to firemarkenterprises.com and sign up for the list there. I've got a few free trainings coming up that I want to tell you about also. We've got the podcast, Protect Your Podcast. If you're a podcaster and you haven't got your legal stuff in order and you'd like to do that and you're not interested in paying lawyers to do it, you want to do it yourself, guess what? I've got a training to help you. You can go to podcastlaw.net. I think that's posted in the comments. There's also an entrepreneur program, legal protection for online entrepreneurs. Similar thing. The do-it-yourselfer. Let me show you how, so you don't mess it up, so you can sleep at night after you've done it. Go to go to law4courses.com, lawforcourses.com. And if you're interested in learning more about branding and trademark protection, I've got a webinar coming up about that as well. That one's coming up on I think it's which one is which? I can't remember. I think it's the 5th of, I'm sorry. The trademark one is coming up on the 8th of January at noon Pacific time. You can go to ownyourbrandnow.com for that one. And I've got lots more. I'll tell you more about all that in a little bit. It's Kelly. Wow, Kelly. Nice to see you. Nice to hear from you. It's been a long time. Kelly and I are, let's just say we go back to school days, young school days. So it's great to see you, Kelly. That's nice. Hope all is well with you. Any questions about the law of media and content and entertainment and those kinds of things? I am here to answer them. That's the whole point. So one thing you'll hear me come back to over and over again tonight is this. At some point, creators stop being just creators and they start, Michael Bernard's here too, great. They stop being just creators and they start running businesses built on content. That's the shift where the legal stuff really starts to matter and the questions change. It's also an essential, a fundamental mindset shift and a fundamental, just a thought process shift, because as you start thinking about yourself as a business owner, as a leader of a company rather than just a creator, that's where the rubber really hits the road. Now, it's where a lot of people do get stuck as well, not because they're not capable or because they, haven't figured it out, because no one ever showed them how the pieces fit together. So again, the work I do boils down to helping creators protect what they're building, understand how it works, and when they're ready to scale things to a real media business kind of a level. So before we dive into our first question, and I hope someone will submit a question, I've got a few sort of lined up as seeds. But anyway, so this is going to be just take about 20 seconds. If you would like to be notified about future sessions like this one, free trainings, workshops, like I've mentioned, the easiest way is to get onto my mailing list over at firemarkenterprises.com. I don't spam. I don't waste your time. This is where I share practical guidance and upcoming events. And on Friday afternoons, usually Friday afternoons, I send out just a sort of here's what I've been up to this week kind of an email. Tells you about the videos I've made, the podcast episodes I've produced, as well as what's coming up. And just head on over to firemarkenterprises.com and fill out the form, and you'll be on the mailing list. We're actually switching to a new platform very soon, so now is the time. When I say very soon, I mean tomorrow morning. So that's going to be fun. We're going to be sending out the newsletter using a different platform. It's going to be interesting, and I imagine there will be some rough spots to smooth out as we go. Anyway, let's get into things. I'm going to start with one of the most common questions that I hear from creators. And if this applies to you, believe me, you are not alone. Here's a question I get all the time. I'm new, I'm just starting out, and I trust the people I'm working with. Do I really need contracts with them? And my answer is, contracts are like fences, right? They set up the boundaries. And the saying is, good fences make good neighbors. Good contracts make good, strong relationships. People who you do business with, it helps if everybody understands the boundaries, understands what's expected of them and what they can expect in return, and understands what the consequences can be if things go the other way. Think of a contract as an outline, a framework for an operating relationship, right? Do you need contracts if you trust your collaborators? Trust is great. But as I said earlier, when money starts working its way into things, people start to remember things differently. They start to think differently about things. They feel put upon. They may feel like they're doing more work and getting less compensation or whatever else it is. So I see this with podcasters a lot. One person will start the show, bring on a guest, bring on a co-host, and they'll be doing the show together. And pretty soon, one of them isn't pulling their weight. They're not equals. They've agreed to split everything equally. They're not equal. What happens? What do you do? The contract can address those kinds of things. And the contract can be your basis for saying, hey, wait a minute, we need to stop, regroup, go back. This is what we said we're going to do. If that's too much for you, let's renegotiate the terms. Again, having a framework, having an outline, a structure is important in these kinds of things. Here's another question I get a lot. I shouldn't get it, but the answer seems intuitive, but the correct answer isn't. If I hire help, who owns the content that's created? If you hire someone to make a video intro for your podcast or for your channel, or you hire them to write content for you or create stuff for you, design a website, design a logo, the law says that unless they are your employee, If they're an independent contractor, the law says they own what they create. They own the copyright in the material, any artistic work they create, expressive material, unless they're your employee with payroll and deductions and taxes and all those kinds of things, or you have a written contract that very specifically articulates that what they're creating is what we call a work made for hire. And that changes some of the structure of how copyright law works for things. Independent contractor owns the material they create independently. If they are working on something for you, even though you've paid them, it's still theirs unless you've got that written contract. This is one of the most common blunders that I see people making. They'll hire an editor, they'll hire a virtual assistant, they'll hire a web designer or a graphics person, and then they have a disagreement, and maybe they didn't have the money to pay a lot up front, so they thought they were getting a buyout, but the creator thinks, well, wait a minute, I'm in this for the piece of the back end, right? And again, no contract, that's a problem, even though you trust each other, right? Or the contract doesn't specify who owns the stuff. That can be a real challenge. So, other questions that come up. Let's see. What legal issue shows up right before creators start making money? Well, do you own what you think you own is sort of that issue, right? When someone's coming along ready to pay you for what you're doing, they want to know that you own it, that you have the right to do what you're doing, and that that's not going to be a problem for them down the line. That's what you'd see in a contract. You would see language about warranties and representations, right? So, ownership, you want a chain of title, right? Nobody's going to publish your book if you can't prove that it's your book. Nobody's going to publish your film, distribute your film, if you can't prove that you've got the permission and the rights from every single person who contributed something to that film. Same is true with the podcast. It's less likely because you're not going to have a problem with it because the podcast, it's yours. You're the one doing it. But if somebody were to come out of the woodwork, it could be a problem for you. Now, when you're going to start making money, those advertisers, they want assurances that the episodes aren't going to be taken down. The episodes are going to stay visible and available, that the advertising messages that they're paying for your audience to see are going to stay there for your audience to see. So that legal issue, this chain of title, becomes an issue. That's why I push really hard for protecting yourself with good contracts with everybody who touches your show, including the guests. If your guests aren't giving you formal written consent for you to record them and publish those recordings, and to use those recordings in ways that may be beyond the scope of what anybody's thinking about right now, you could have a problem down the line. Yeah. Michael says, I wrote a family sports comedy film screenplay, fictional, but based on real events and people in 1960, including events involving a team in the NBA. Baseball or basketball? Oh, NBA. When should I try to get permission? I want to avoid fictionalizing the names. Okay, Michael, that's going to be interesting. Fictionalizing is something you would do if you are trying to eliminate claims about defamation, libel, slander, or violations of privacy. So if you're not revealing anything that's not already public information, and you're not departing from the truth in ways that might hurt someone's reputation or be embarrassing to them, you might not need to get permission at all. Although mentioning names of NBA teams and showing logos and uniform designs and things, there are probably going to be a lot of clearance issues. Should you, as the writer, be the one who goes out and gets all those clearances? Probably not, unless you're also going to make the film. I think that's the job of the producer of the film and their legal team, to decide what needs to be cleared and to do the clearances. Now, the issue here is you need to understand and know what's what, because remember I was saying those warranties and representations and that chain of title, the producer of the film wants to know that if they don't get this permission and they get sued, you're going to have to sort of indemnify and protect them against that, hold them harmless. So you want to sort of know what the boundaries are and sort of be insistent that they do the things that need to be done. And that may mean in the negotiations sort of disclosing, hey, permissions haven't been obtained from this, and this, and those will be needed. So they go in with their eyes open. Now, if you can get the permissions and it's easy and not expensive, then maybe it makes sense to do it. So you've got a nice bundle all tied up in a bow to give to the producer who buys your screenplay. But most of the time, producers and their legal teams will do those clearances because they and the distributors and the insurance companies all kind of, they can work together on that kind of stuff. So that's a great question. Thank you for that, Michael. Kelly says, many physicians feel an obligation to correct misinformation on social media platforms. At what point does a physician need supplemental legal protection beyond typical med mal coverage? What are the many other considerations as the platform grows? Oh, Kelly, that is a great question. So, in fact, I'm at the conference I'm going to be speaking at in a couple of weeks. I'm speaking to a sub-conference that is a medical conference as well, and this is the kind of question I'll be fielding from them. So, my understanding as a lawyer, I know that my legal malpractice insurance doesn't cover advice that I give here. You know, I'm not talking to my clients, so I don't owe those folks a legal affirmative duty of care like I would if they were my client. And the same is true for physicians. The risk is that a physician says something, or a lawyer says something, and then a viewer or a listener takes that, relies on it, causes themselves some sort of harm, and then turns around and sues the doctor. But you said this. Well, I said it, and that's part of the reason why we talk in general terms rather than specifics, and we always try to couch things in, hey, talk to your doctor, talk to your lawyer. Do they need supplemental legal protection? Yeah, I think their malpractice insurance isn't going to cover a statement that was made on social media or on a online media channel or something like that, because that's outside the scope of the normal practice of medicine. If you said it to a patient in the office, then yes, it's going to cover that. But outside the office, outside that environment, I don't think it covers. And that's why, well, the good news is also that liability for providing educational content is pretty unlikely. I often liken, what I do as a podcaster or as a YouTuber to if I wrote a book on this stuff and I published it, even though I got something wrong, someone who relies on that to their detriment probably can't sue me because they read the book and relied on it. And it's what disclaimers are for. So I actually have a disclaimer guide. I think it's disclaimerguide.com. And that helps folks sort of identify the things that they need to think about disclaiming and how to craft disclaimers and so on. So great question. Great question. And as a platform grows, yeah, like you said, I mean, I'm thinking of there's that allergist who also is a hula hooper. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's great. And he debunks a lot of stuff. And there's a bunch of doctors online who are doing that kind of thing. I think mostly they're responding to misinformation or disinformation. And so as long as they're getting it right and accurate, they're on pretty solid ground. And again, you have to be careful not to say, specifically, you should do this, right? You give the general thing. Here's what happens when you, consume too much of this, or when you have an allergic reaction, or those kinds of things. So, I think disclaimers are the answer. And yeah, maybe get he's great, Dr. Zachary Rubin. That's right. Disclaimers are great. And then it is probably possible to get some other media errors and omissions insurance to cover against these kinds of claims if that's a concern. And that's a business decision we all have to make for ourselves. So great question. Another question that came in ahead of time. When should I worry about trademarks? Well, I would say early and often. Your trademark is your brand, right? A trademark is a distinctive word or phrase or symbol or logo or something like that, or sometimes it's a framework of approaching things that is an identifier of the source of your goods or services, right? So when you see a shoe with that distinctive swoosh on the side, we know that's Nike and that's coming from that company. Or Three Stripes is Adidas, right? Or the little polo player on the shirt, or the alligator on the shirt, right? Those are all trademarks that identify the brand that is the source of these goods or services. Very much like where the word brand comes from is the searing of a symbol into the hide of a cow to identify what ranch it came from, right? The Circle R Ranch, or the that's a bad example because that's the trademark symbol, but you know what I'm saying, the Rocking J or something like that. That was a distinctive brand or symbol affixed to the goods or services to tell people where it came from. That's what a trademark is. So if you have a great show title or channel title for your YouTube channel, or if you have a nickname that you use, like a handle, those all could be trademarks if it's distinctive and it sets you apart from the others. I think that that's worth protecting so that you don't encounter the situation that I see often where someone starts a podcast and a couple of years goes by and then pretty soon there's 12 other podcasts with a similar title. Now, some of that is you have to choose distinctive titles in the first place, but also you should check and verify that you're not starting something where someone also already occupies that field with a similar brand. Confusing similarity or likelihood of confusion is the test for whether there's been infringement of a brand. But you can register your trademarks, and that is the locking in protection at the national level so that you don't encounter that problem of other people in the US, for example, adopting a similar title for their show, right? I have a trademark on the podcast lawyer. So there's nobody else out there who can legitimately call him or herself the podcast lawyer. There are other podcast lawyers out there, but they need to come up with a different nickname. So a different brand name. So should you worry about trademarks? Yes, you should worry about that. I would say as soon as you've settled on a distinctive title that you're going to invest in and start using to push out your stuff, because you don't want that confusion, right? What if the other one, who's also using that same title or name or channel name or whatever, what if that person puts out a bunch of crap or gets the facts wrong, right? Well, I'm Dr. XYZ and you're Dr. XYZ, and Dr. XYZ said that. Thanks, Kelly. It's great to see you. Enjoy. Have a great night. So you don't want to be affiliated with that other brand if they're getting it wrong or putting out dreck, those kinds of things. That's kind of the importance of trademark. Plus, if you ever get to a point where you might want to sell your company or sell your business, that brand can be very valuable because that's what the audience, the marketplace, knows and connects to, right? When you go looking for cream-filled chocolate wafer sandwich cookies, you go looking for a particular brand of cream-filled chocolate wafer sandwich cookies that comes from a company that also has a very distinctive name, Nabisco, right? We look for Oreos, not just any old chocolate wafer cream-filled cookie, right? So Oreo, you look for Oreo. Hey, if there were 6 other brands of cookies all called Oreo out there, that would be confusing to the consumers. It would lead to distrust of the product and undermine the value that that Nabisco has built over time in that particular brand of cookies, right? And that's bad for everybody. So that's the thinking behind trademarks. So all of these questions, do I need contracts when I trust the people I'm working with? If I hire help who owns the stuff, what are the legal issues that come up right before you make money? And when should I worry about trademarks? These are early warning system kinds of questions. And that's what I'm here to try to help with. I help creators protect the things that they're building and understand how they work so that when they're ready, they can scale into a real media business. That's my mission in life, I guess you could say. I want to help creators get their messages out, achieve the impact and influence and the income that they deserve. That's the bottom line. Okay. So if you're listening here and thinking, you know what, I know I need contracts, I just need the right kinds of contracts so I can move forward safely. Well, I'm here to tell you that's what easylegaltemplates.com is for. These are templates that I've drafted, documents, legal contracts for things like, you're hiring a videographer to follow you around an event, or you're hiring an editor to edit your podcast, or you're bringing on a graphic designer, or you're looking for a co-host for your podcast. All these kinds of things. these templates are here for you to use with no guesswork, not having to do a scavenger hunt or a Google search or, God forbid, trust a hallucinating AI tool to get it right. The AI tools are getting better. I'll admit that, but I still wouldn't trust them. I've seen enough mistakes. In fact, I saw one today where somebody had plugged in a couple of sample contracts into an AI and then said, give me a contract that combines these and does XYZ. And it did that. It made no legitimate logical sense at all in the way it was laid out in the contract, but it did hit all those checkboxes. So then I had to go through it and read it and try to make heads or tails of what we really wanted. And what I ended up doing at my client's request was revamping it and doing a whole new contract, making the contract that did what I was able to infer their intentions were. We want to make the purpose of a contract is really, it's that framework, that roadmap for how the deal is going to operate. But also, you want to be able to say, if somebody's complaining that it didn't work out, that they didn't do their job, or I didn't get paid, or whatever, you want to be able to prove that you did do what you were supposed to do, or that you didn't. And the way to do this is be very clear about what's required under the deal. Well, a confusing contract is maybe worse than no contract at all sometimes. So that's why I discourage people from using the AIs to draft anything more than the simplest little deals. Easylegaltemplates.com. Let me type it in. Actually, hang on. Easylegaltemplates.com is the place for that. There's also, for podcasters specifically, there's a subset of those at podcastlawforms.com, which is also the same kind of stuff, but that was where I started with this, was contracts for podcasters specifically. If you have a guest coming on your show, you need them to give you that consent to record and edit and publish and reuse the content. Go to podcastrelease.com and get a free podcast guest release. Typing it in now. Podcastrelease.com for a free podcast guest release. I got a lot of these kinds of things, so stick with me. We'll tell you more about it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about deals and contracts and collaborations. Any questions on that subject from anybody? If you're here with me and you haven't said hello yet, drop a note in the comments just to say hi and let me know if you have a question or a comment or something that's puzzling you. Let's talk about it. That's what I'm here for. This is an AMA, Ask Me Anything session, and I'll stick around until we've got the questions answered, or at least till the top of the hour, maybe longer, hopefully longer. But we can talk about this. Deals, contracts, collaborations, brand deals, co-hosts and producer arrangements, how you get paid, timing of payment, ownership language, right? So, anybody have any questions? I'm looking at my notes to see what I can answer sort of independently here. Let's see. One thing I get into talking with people about a little bit is the difference between a brand deal and a sponsorship. In one sense, they're the same. The company, the sponsor, the brand, is paying the host for access to the audience's attention, right? So the product that you as a creator have is the audience's attention. You make stuff for them that attracts them and gets them to sit and watch your stuff or listen to your stuff and give you their attention. And then what you do is you essentially sell off a little piece of that attention to your sponsor, hopefully in a way that comes off as somewhat organic and somewhat comfortable. It doesn't feel like a blast of icy water in your face when you get that ad, but sometimes it is a little disjointed and disruptive. But a brand deal is a little different because the brand deal is sort of made at the behest of the brand. The content is made at the behest of the brand. Whereas if you have a sponsor for your weekly podcast, you're going to make that podcast episode either way. It doesn't matter who the sponsor is, right? You're going to just, this is brought to you by XYZ Mattress Company this prepared foods company or something like that. Now, a brand deal is a little more customized to coincide or work with the particular brand. Sometimes it's cosmetics company pays a makeup influencer to use their products and do a get ready with me video or something like that, putting on the makeup and talking about how smoothly that goes on and how wonderful that concealer covers things up, and those kinds of things, and naming all the brand products there. That's a brand deal, right? Where you're sort of, it's almost a product embedding or product integration into the content. Other kinds of brand deals are, just, hey, use this brand while you're doing other things. If Stanley was going to pay me to promote Stanley cups, I might just make it a point to drink from my cup a bunch of times during the show, and even comment, this is great. I filled this thing up with ice and water at 6 o'clock this morning, and here it is 6:36 p.m. at night, and it's still nice and chilly, nice and cool. It's a great way to stay refreshed and hydrated all day long. Hey, Stanley, if you're here listening, give me a call. That could be a brand deal too, right? It's sort of an endorsement kind of a thing. Now, there are a bunch of rules that apply in these situations too. Like if you're doing a paid spot, if you've been paid to use a product or promote a product or endorse something or whatever, you have to disclose that fact. Either let it be known very, very clearly, they paid me for this, or today's episode is brought to you by Stanley, the makers of the Stanley flask cups and things. Or you would just, put something on screen and say something out loud in the recording or whatever, just saying, hey, we get paid a little bit of money when you buy from that affiliate link or something like that. One area that I see this come up with a lot, and we haven't really seen a lot of law on the subject yet, but it's only a matter of time. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is the organization, the body of the federal government that regulates advertising, that handles truth in advertising, false advertising kinds of issues. And they have taken the view over the years that these disclosures are necessary. It's important to tell the audience who paid for what they're seeing, especially if what they're seeing is a message to this is a great product, you should buy it, right? Well, I think that's true when you have a guest who's paid to be on the show as well. I have a number of clients that are in the podcast space where they produce podcasts, sort of branded podcasts, where they'll have guests on the show who have paid for the appearance. So they get a chance to talk to an audience that's interested in a subject matter, to talk about their product, their brand, their company, their business, whatever it is, or their book, right? I'm interviewing the author of XYZ today. Well, if that author wanted to get in front of a great audience, he might be willing to pay something. And if he does, I think it's incumbent on the owner of the host of the show or the producer of the show to make sure the audience is aware, or at least has access to the information that this is a paid appearance, right? Wouldn't you want to know, if you're listening to this interview and it sounds great and you think, I'm going to go out and buy that book tomorrow, wouldn't it be nice to know that that author paid for the chance to get that message in front of you? It's an advertisement, isn't it? But it doesn't feel like a commercial. So that's where the disclosures come in. If it feels like a commercial, everybody knows, and you're cool. But do your best to be transparent and disclose about that kind of thing. What else needs to be in brand deals? Another area that comes up in brand deals a lot is the term, the timing, right? Because oftentimes the brand will want access to use the content that you create for them on an ongoing basis. And the contract should be very specific about what's covered, for how long, what happens if they want to continue using it. Is there a reuse fee? Is there a closeout period where they get to keep using it for a few months? Is it a campaign, or is it a one-off thing? Is it user-generated content, as they sometimes call it? All of these things. And yeah, you just have to be very specific about these things. Make sure you're being compensated fairly and appropriately. It's a great way to make a monetization happen with your show, whether it's a YouTube show or a podcast or a blog or whatever. Those paid endorsements, paid spots can be very valuable. All right. Who's here with me? If you haven't already said hello, drop a note in the comments and let me know who's here. I'd love to say hi back and hear from you about what's what. Now, I think if you're on LinkedIn, I may not be able to see your comments. So let me just double check what's going on there. It looks like we've got 3 on YouTube and 1 on Twitch. Hello to those out in Twitch land. Say something in the chat if you can, so I know you're here. I'd love to say hi. What else have I got to talk about here? Let's see. Michael's still here. Okay. Well, if you've got more questions, you're not limited to the one I already answered. So hit me with more if you've got them. Other topics in the deals collaborations that come up: co-hosts and co-producers. Again, it comes down to contract. I think you should have a contract with everybody who comes in contact with your productions. If you have a co-producer, whose job is what? You need to articulate these things. How are we going to share the revenue, or how are we going to get paid? Same with co-hosts or just hosts. If you're a producer of a show and you have a host, you need to sort of hire them. It doesn't have to be a salaried position, but you need to have a contract that lays out what they're supposed to do and when, and how they're going to be compensated, if at all. And if not, we articulate the compensation in terms of something else. Maybe it's the exposure, right? Because exposure puts a roof over your head and food on the table, doesn't it? Sorry, this is where I come in thinking like the artists and musicians out there who, oh, but it'll be great exposure for your band, that kind of thing. Be careful about that. Payment timing is another factor. When do you get paid, and how will you know when it's time to get paid? And then again, that ownership, right? These contracts with co-hosts, producers, things like that, I think of these as the podcast prenup. This is lays out the nature of the relationship, and more importantly, what's supposed to happen if the relationship doesn't continue working the way we hope it does, right? So how do we wind things up? How do we close it out? Who gets the house and kids, essentially? That's what a podcast prenup really is about. And we all should be thinking about this earlier on, because oftentimes it's too late when we start to think about it and the relationship's already starting to head in the wrong direction. So this is not, and this is true of any business relationship. If you're going into business with somebody, you should have a contract that lays out what's what, who's expecting what of the other, and what do they expect in return, right? That's the nature of it. Business is about documenting these things. Oh, excuse me. Oh, well, we've been answering some deal and collaboration kind of questions, which are really relevant for podcasters. And if you're a podcaster and tonight has you thinking a little bit, I really should have more of this kind of stuff locked down. Let me tell you quickly about a free training that I have. I'm running it coming up on January 5th, 10 o'clock in the morning on January 5th. So that's the first Monday after the New Year holiday weekend. It's a training called How to Protect Your Podcast. That's the short title. How to Protect Your Podcast Without Hiring Expensive Lawyers. Specifically for podcasters who want easy, affordable strategies, a roadmap for these kinds of things without having to hire someone like myself. So you can learn what documents matter, what mistakes are the ones that cost podcasters the most, how to protect your show as it's growing. You can go to podcastlaw.net and register right now. We'll send you some reminders, and you'll be in the loop for when that comes up, coming up in a couple of weeks. Right now, I'm taking next week off before the holiday, and the week after, actually on the 29th, I'm doing a webinar. But yeah, it's that season. So hope everybody's doing that. Actually, fill me in if you're watching still. I'd love to hear what your plans. Do you have anything interesting going on during the holidays? Something unusual? Are you making special episodes for the holidays? I've done some special episodes. I did something for Thanksgiving. I did a holiday gift guide for creators around Thanksgiving also. But my content for the next few weeks is not holiday specific. So I want it to be evergreen, and I don't need it, not like a Christmas tree evergreen. I want it to last forever, be accessible and useful to people any time of year if they find it on YouTube or on the podcast feed. So, but anyway, check out the How to Protect Your Podcast at podcastlaw.net. Let me actually open that up in a browser and just show you what's what there as I can. Free live workshop, How to Protect Your Podcast, easy, affordable legal strategies without hiring expensive lawyers. Let me switch over to share my screen. And there it is, How to Protect Your Podcast, easy, affordable legal strategies without hiring expensive lawyers. Who's the workshop for? Well, anybody who is passionate about podcast creation and ready to expand their reach and attract thousands of loyal listeners, increase impact, maximize and monetize their podcast effectively, and turn their passion into a lucrative endeavor. We're going to talk about the 5 costly mistakes that hold your podcast back. We're going to talk about the mastering the podcast fundamentals you can't afford to overlook, and help you sidestep those big mistakes that hold you back. Oh, that's in there twice. I have a little conversation with the virtual assistant there who designed the page. But anyway, there you are. Oh, and there's little me. Okay. So yeah, come and check that out when you can. And I hope you can join me for that. It's podcastlaw.net. Let me pop it in here. All right. What else have we got? Let me come back to my notes over here. Let's see. This is for you to ask your questions. I'm here to answer them. I do have a few topics that I can talk about, and as you can tell, I can kind of talk on and on ad nauseum about things. But let's see. Music and clips, AI editing versus manipulation, DMCA takedowns, permission. I can talk about all these. Excuse me, I'm tired. Today was the last day of school for my kids for the holidays. They are on Christmas break starting tomorrow. So it was an early morning today, but tomorrow will not be. And I'm relieved about that. Music and clips. So using other people's content in your show, your content, is a sticky area. If you want to use a piece of music, it needs to be licensed. If you're using it as a show intro or as underbed music, or you just want to play the song or something like that, you need the permissions. And music in particular is challenging because there's lots of rights holders you have to think about. With music, there are 2 pieces of work that can be copyrighted and protected that we need to think about. One is the recording of a song, right, that the artist made with the record company, usually. So that recording, there's a copyright in that, and there are a bunch of different rights implicated when you want to use it. One of those, so the ownership of a copyright means that the author, the owner, owns the exclusive right to make copies, to distribute copies, to make derivative works, that is to incorporate the work into other things or make things based on the original, to display and to perform the work. So if you play a recording in your podcast episode or in your YouTube video, you are performing the work. And by performing it, you are essentially making a copy into your work, assuming it's a recorded thing that you're making, right? So there's a performance, a recording, a copy, and when you publish it, it's distributed. So you're implicating a bunch of those rights. And by incorporating it into the new work, you're also making a derivative work. So that's 4 out of those 5 rights implicated right there. Unless what you're doing satisfies a very narrow First Amendment exception to copyright law, which is not an exception, it's a defense to copyright infringement cases called fair use. And what fair use is a way of balancing the interests of free speech against the interests of copyright owners, because both of these are concepts that are really enshrined in the Constitution, right? Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech, and Congress shall have the power to make a law protecting the work of authors and inventors for limited times to the rights of their work, right? So that's copyright or patent. So you want to use that song, you got to get permission to use the recording. But there's the second copyright, and that is the composition. The song may have been written by the artist who recorded it, but it may also have been written by somebody else. And that composition is a separate work of copyright. Creative expression fixed in a tangible form. There's a copyright. Springs to existence the moment it was created. So the songwriter and the music publisher that represents the songwriter own the copyright to the composition. So that's two copyrighted works just for playing one piece of music on your show. And again, when you perform the work, when you copy, put it into the episode, you're copying, you're reproducing, you're distributing, and you are performing and making a derivative work. So same thing. So now you've got to go to the publisher and the record company for the permission for those things. And it's at least two stop shopping, right? For each of those things, right? The publisher and the artist will need to approve for the record company. The songwriter will approve for the publisher. So there's a lot of finagling to be done to get the rights. Then you have the organizations out there, the performing rights organizations, ASCAP, BMI. These are organizations that are in the business of collecting royalties for public performances. So like when a song is played on the radio, the songwriter and the publisher, they get paid a fraction of a penny or whatever it is, according to a formula based on logs that are kept by all the radio stations. Likewise, if it's played in a coffee house or a restaurant or a nightclub, there are these organizations collect blanket royalties for these things, and they allocate portions of those royalty payments to the artists, sort of using a complicated algorithm and formula. But the good news is that in the podcasting space, you don't need to worry about that. If you've gotten the licenses directly from the publisher and the record company for all the rights that you want to do, then you don't need to worry about ASCAP and BMI, because the owners of those things can directly license that. And that's just easier, better. Likewise with YouTube and video. On video, the hosting platforms do pay some of those blanket licenses, but you would still need to, as a creator, you'd still need to be cleared with those things. So it's just easier, believe it or not, to do that 2 or 3 stop shopping and negotiate directly with the publisher, the artist, the label, the composer, that kind of thing. All right. So that's the story with music. Now, things like film clips, it's a little easier. You probably only have to stop one place to get the permission, and that's going to be from the film company that owns the clip, for example. And again, get the permission. Now, if you are doing a show that is reviewing the clip, the film, commentary and criticism, those kinds of things, that's where this fair use defense comes into play. So what the fair use defense says and does is that it's not an infringement if the work is used in such a way that balances in favor of free speech. And we look at a 4-factor balancing test. How do you balance 4 things? And I always imagine that game with the board and the ball that you're trying to keep in the middle and not go into the hole, or I don't know. Anyway, 4-way balancing test. The 4 factors are the purpose and character of the allegedly infringing use. Is it more commercial or is it more artistic? Is it more news and commentary kind of stuff, or is it more entertainment and just make a buck kind of commercial, right? That's going to weigh one direction or the other. Next up is the nature of the original work. Same question. Is it a newsy kind of stuff? Is it public affairs kind of content, or is it entertainment? And really what we're looking at is is the new use a replacement for the old, or is it a different, transformative of what the old one was, the original purpose? So transformativeness is sort of a ghost factor in there, a spirit factor. Then we have the third factor, which is the amount and substantiality of the portion that was taken. So if you're playing the whole song, then that's the whole thing, 100%, right? If you're using a whole photograph and you leave it on screen for a bunch, that's very substantial. You're using the whole thing. But sometimes you're just using 10 seconds of something. That's where this idea, well, I can use 30 seconds or 16 bars or whatever it is. That's not really true. It's not a purely quantitative analysis. It also has to take into account qualitative factors. So be thoughtful and careful about that. And then the fourth factor is the impact on the value for the original or the market for the original. This is often mistaken by people who say, but I'm not making any money from it. And that is not the question. We don't care whether you're making any money from it or not. What we care about in this analysis is, did you deprive the original owner of an opportunity to make money from it, or to say no if they don't want the use, right? If that's the case, then it may be considered infringing and not fair use. So we have this complicated 4-factor test. There's no rule of thumb, no 30 seconds or 6 bars or whatever kinds of rules of thumb apply. We have to do this analysis on a case-by-case basis for each copyrighted work and each time it's used. So it's expensive, it's time-consuming, and it's better just not to do that, not to get into it. If you're doing reviews, if you're doing documentary, if you're doing news kinds of stuff, then that's more likely to take you in the direction of fair use. And you should probably have a consultation with me or someone like me who can help you establish some best practices to make sure you're on the straight and narrow with those kinds of things. All right. Another topic I wanted to touch on, AI and using it in editing and manipulation of content. Michael, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I'm going to cover AI briefly. So AI is this amazing tool, right? It's really remarkable what's happened in just a couple of years with these technologies. There are a number of questions about how the AIs got trained and whether or not the uploading millions of books is infringement. The AI companies have argued that no, it's fair use because we're transforming it. We're training these machines. It's not a direct copying, right? However, there have been some cases, in fact, a couple recently, that have said, no, the outputs, if it's capable of outputting the exact same thing, then that's infringement. It's not fair use and so on. So that's kind of where we're going there. So that's one thing to be concerned about. If you use AI tools in making your show, maybe not editing, but writing your show or to create video content or whatever, you need to think about making sure that it's not a direct copy or too substantially similar copy of something that was already out there. So we don't ask AI to give us an image of Batman in a Darth Vader costume, or that's a bad Spider-Man in Darth Vader wear, right? Or vice versa, because what we'll get is an infringement of either Spider-Man or Darth Vader or both, and that's dangerous. So be thoughtful about the outputs that you use in your work, because you will get sued even if the AI company is not sued, right? In editing, we need to be thoughtful about not changing the meaning of the words that were spoken, about not changing the sound and quality of the person's voice. It's one thing to warm it up a little bit, sweeten the sound a little bit, those kinds of things, but editing can really do a hatchet job on somebody and make them sound like a totally different person. So we need to be thoughtful about that. In the podcast guest release that I have put out there, I actually have a sentence in there that says the guest authorizes the use of AI to edit the content, provided that it does not change the meaning or substance of the words of the statements. It's one thing to cut out extraneous ums and uhs and things like that. It's another entirely to change what the words said, how they line up as a sentence. So that's something where it crosses over from merely cleaning up to manipulating. The sound of a person's voice. We can use AI tools to replicate a particular person now, and it's remarkably good quality sounding stuff. But we run into questions of misleading our audience. Misappropriation of the sound of a person's voice is in some places a kind of violation of the right of privacy. So that's something to think, or right of publicity in some places. So that's something we want to think about too. All right, Michael, I'm going to get to your question. I'm building AI segments from my screenplay that I'll edit together with Premiere Pro into a movie trailer to get Hollywood producers and managers interested in the screenplay. AI is a problem in attitude, but how about legal issues? Okay, well, there we go. So I think I covered most of that in what I've just been saying. We've got worries about the inputs. We have to worry about what the output gives us, and is it genuinely different and original, or is it a knockoff of something? And we have to worry about how we manipulate things using the AIs to create stuff that ain't real, right? And deepfakes is an example of a danger zone, right? We don't want to get into deepfaking, making it seem like someone said something they didn't, or did something that they didn't, those kinds of things. There's deepfake porn out there now that is scary stuff. Anyway, other legal issues around the use of AI in making your trailer. Well, I think you need to share, it may be obvious from looking at your trailer that it's coming from AI, but if it's not, maybe you should put a little caption or a bug or something on the screen just to let people know this is made by AI. That's my thinking. But no, I mean, if you're really using it just as a trailer to promote the film, the screenplay to the production community, I won't say anything goes, but and don't use real actors' likenesses and things like that unless they've signed on to be a part of the film. There was a case years ago where a filmmaker put together a lookbook for the screenplay that they wanted to produce, and they had pictures of Sylvester Stallone and Gene Hackman and a few other famous actors associated with the characters that were in the screenplay. And it gave the false impression that these people were endorsing the screenplay and wanted to have something to do with it. They had not been consulted at all. So be very thoughtful and careful. Don't do using AI what you wouldn't have done just using cut and paste tools, 20 years ago. I guess that's the bottom line there. But no, I don't see any real major legal issues just with making a trailer. Other than, now here's a concern, Michael, that you might not have thought about, is if you are uploading your screenplay into the AI for it to then interpret and do stuff, well, you may have lost control over the screenplay by doing so, because now that AI has those ideas and that expression in it somewhere that it may then tap into to use for someone else's. Hey, tell me a story about ball players in the 1960s. And all of a sudden you see bits and pieces of your screenplay showing up in there. But who infringed your copyright, if any? Did anybody? No. And the ideas, as you've probably heard, copyright law protects the expression of ideas. It does not protect the underlying ideas themselves. So idea of boy meets girl, boy falls for girl, they have a star-crossed lovers situation, their parents don't approve, and they end up, having a suicide pact together. That's an idea. That's a series of ideas. And it happens to be the foundation for Romeo and Juliet and West Side Story and a bunch of other stories, right? So the point being, it's possible to steal an idea without stealing protected material. So be thoughtful and careful about how we use that, and a little reluctant maybe to upload your work into these systems. What else? I'm going to talk for a few more minutes. If there's other questions, let's have them. I've been going for an hour and I'm dry and whatever, and I'm getting tired. So DMCA takedowns. The DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, is a part of the copyright law that protects in the digital realm. You've all seen a video gets taken down, something was hosted on a website, and now that site's gone. That's because the copyright owners have exercised their rights under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act to get that material taken down. Basically, an owner of a copyright can notify an online service provider that they are hosting infringing material, identify the where, identify what the original material is, what the allegedly infringing material is, and demand that it be taken down. There's a special format for writing the letter and so on, but it's pretty straightforward. And in order to avoid liability themselves, the hosting companies, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, the LinkedIns, all those, they have to have a policy of taking these things down quickly upon receipt of these notices. Then what they do is they notify the person who posted the allegedly infringing material, and they give them a chance to counter-notify, to say, no, it's not infringing, and here's why. And assuming they do that, then the material gets put back up, and the parties are left to fight it out themselves, with the hosting service being along the sidelines waiting for the outcome, basically. And there, the hosting service finds itself in what we refer to as the safe harbor against those the liability. No lawsuits can come at them if they've done things by the book, by their own policies. So that's why YouTube has a takedown procedure that you can avail yourself of if you see somebody using your stuff without permission, those kinds of things. And that brings us to the topic of permissions. Permissions and licensing are really flip sides of the same coin. I sort of say, well, if it's not paid for, it's considered a permission. And if it's paid for, it's considered a license. But basically, it's just I'm granting you certain rights to do certain things for a certain amount of time under certain circumstances. And maybe one of those circumstances is a payment of money or royalties or something like that. So when in doubt, seek and obtain permission, and be prepared to negotiate licensing fees in exchange for that. So this is about creator literacy, really. We just all need to kind of know and understand this stuff. Now, most folks who've been around the film and TV industry kind of get it, but a lot of podcasts is an interesting thing. A lot of creators in the podcasting space and even folks in YouTube who don't come from a film and TV or entertainment industry background haven't thought about these things. And so part of why I'm here is to educate and inform and so on. So I want to tell you one more workshop that I've got coming up here in this one is December 29th. It's called Legal Protection for Online Entrepreneurs, Coaches, and Courses. Lawforcourses.com is the place for that. You can go to that. And actually, let me capture the whole thing and paste it in here. Paste it in the comments for those who want to check out the link later on. They can do that. It is another online webinar. It's the 29th. That's a week from this coming Monday. If you are using your content to grow your business, whether it's coaching, courses, membership services, this training is for you. It walks you through the legal foundations that every creator-led business needs so you can scale with confidence and not fear. The training is there at lawforcourses.com, and you're invited. This is for you if you've gone beyond just podcasts and you've got online courses, coaching, membership, those kinds of things as well. Similar concepts, how to do it yourself without hiring lawyers if that's the way you want to go on things. If that's how you roll, awesome. Okay. So I think I'm going to wrap it up. That's been a lot of me talking, and I appreciate those who have been here tonight. If you're still here and you're watching and you haven't had a chance to chime in with a question or comment, I'm going to give you 30 seconds or so to do that. Type it in the comments and let me know. If you're watching on the replay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Reach out if you have any other questions. You can even post a question in the comments here, and I'll probably get you an answer to it in a reply comment. So love to do this kind of thing. I'm going to try to do this more often, maybe once a month. So stay tuned. And don't forget, get on the mailing list. Go to firemarkenterprises.com. Let me type this in. Wrong place. Hang on. firemarkenterprises.com for the mailing list. And I'd love to be able to be in touch with you with those newsletters and let you know when I have new training programs and things like that coming up. So I think that's going to do it for this session. If anyone has anything to say, speak now, or as they say, forever hold your peace, at least until next time. All right. Thank you, folks, for being with me tonight. I do appreciate your attention and your camaraderie and for helping out. And I'll see you again real soon. In the meantime, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, and enjoy the holidays. Be well. Bye-bye.